5. A few weeks later, after dinner one night, the orphans walked in unison back to their dorm rooms as usual. The only sound was the rhythmic thudding of footsteps as each orphan walked in sync with each other. The line of girls grew shorter until only Katherine was left to return to her room. One of the nuns always followed the orphans to lock them in their rooms. Rose had explained that as soon as the 11 o'clock bell rang, they were all expected to say a decade of the rosary before going to bed. Tonight, Katherine rushed to change into her nightdress and gingerly knelt at the side of her bed. The floorboards were hard and cold against her knees, but she tried not to focus on that too much as she swayed from side to side to try to alleviate some of the pain. She took out her rosary beads and had just managed to half-heartedly whisper her way through a verse of Hail Mary when the wooden latch on her bedroom door swung open and hit the wall from the sheer force used. Every girl's room had a hatch on the door. They had been created by Sister Nora herself so she could look in on the orphans. Katherine had heard the other nuns say that it was for their own safety, so they could check on the girls to make sure they were all right. However, everyone knew it was due to Sister Nora's desire for complete control. Every one of the orphanage's processes was governed by control. The hatches let Sister Nora check that the orphans were following her commands, even in their isolated moments. Instead of feeling safe in the confines of their rooms where they should be able to rest from Sister Nora's grueling schedule, their privacy was invaded. Even in their most private moments, she could easily single out those who were being lax in obeying her demands. Luckily, by now Katherine was well used to the tyrannical nature of Sister Nora. She had been caught slacking in her prayers during her first few weeks in the convent and knew never to make the same fatal mistake again. Remembering that night made Katherine suddenly feel cold. She had been so preoccupied with her own thoughts that night, trying to make sense of why everyone was always so on edge, that she hadn't heard the bell ring. When Sister Nora came around for her usual inspections, Katherine hadn't been kneeling at the side of her bed as she should have been. In an instant she learnt the answer to the question that had been dominating her mind. Was no one safe here? Sister Nora, staring through the hatch with a face like thunder, declared that she was to follow her to her office at once, and she unlocked the bedroom door. Katherine shuffled along the dark, ominous hallway behind Sister Nora toward her private office. She couldn't remember the last time she had been in such close proximity to the head nun, other than her very first day at the orphanage. Sister Nora preferred to keep a watch over the orphans from a distance rather than engaging directly with them, so the fact that Katherine was on her own with this woman terrified her to her very core. Sister Nora swung open her office door and stood aside for Katherine to enter. It took a few moments for Katherine's feet to move again, so Sister Nora pushed her roughly over the threshold, causing her to stumble into the room. Katherine shivered as she stood in front of the wooden desk in the middle of the room. Sister Nora had given her no chance to change out of her nightdress, and the icy cold night air made her bones rattle. The nun sat down behind the desk and relaxed back into her chair, giving the impression that she was completely at ease. She tapped her fingers one by one on the wooden desk, and a chilling smile appeared on her face as she stared at Katherine. Finally, she broke the silence. "You forget your place, girl," she barked. "You are here because you are utterly alone in this world. You are here because you have no one. And yet, even though you're barely in the door, you feel as if you can disobey my rules. Why is that?" Sister Nora paused and sprang up from her seat. "You think you're better than the rest of the orphans, don't you, Katherine? This cannot go unpunished." She let out an exaggerated breath, shook her head, and walked towards an aged-brown cabinet at the side of the room. She opened its heavy doors and pulled out a thin writing crop. Katherine swallowed. Her mouth had gone dry. Sister Nora continued, "My rules will always be followed here because, within these walls, I am the only power, the only God you need to know." She switched the crop back and forth as she circled Katherine. "Raise your nightdress above your knees and repeat after me. I am alone. I am alone." Katherine's breath hitched as she felt the sharp lash of the crop hit the back of her knees. The sudden shock of the pain made it impossible for her to speak. "Again!" Sister Nora shouted as she sliced the crop through the air, her voice becoming shrill as she shouted at her. "I am alone," Katherine stammered through gritted teeth. "I have no one," Sister Nora snarled while hitting her again. The stinging on the back of her legs made it difficult to concentrate on repeating the words back to her verbatim. Tears threatened, but Katherine fought hard to hold them back. She wouldn't give Sister Nora the satisfaction of showing her pain or that her words and actions were upsetting her. She had to see this ordeal through until Sister Nora had had enough of inflicting her abuse. "I have no one." Crack. "I am alone." Crack. The sound of the crop cracking against her skin oddly gave Katherine something to focus on rather than the physical pain. She had managed to disassociate herself from the agony ripping through her body and focus her mind on counting each time the crop whipped the back of her knees. She wasn't sure how much time passed before Sister Nora finally threw the crop onto her desk. She was gasping for air from the exertion of wielding the crop with such pressure against Katherine's skin. Katherine forced herself to glance up at Sister Nora, whose face was flushed with anger. A vein bulged from the side of her neck, indicating that the nun was still furious with her. Clearly, carrying out Katherine's punishment had done little to minimize her aggravation. Despite the sheer amount of pain coursing through her body, Katherine surprised herself by returning the nun's cold stare, thinking, "You want to break me? To wear me down like all the other orphans? To see me cry and beg? But I'm not like the other pathetic urchins in this place. I refuse to let you win." And she glared at her in defiance. Sister Nora's eyes narrowed, and she recommended whipping Katherine with increased speed, strength, trying to make her crumble. When she stopped a short while later, she leaned down and whispered into Katherine's right ear, her husky breath making the hair on the back of Katherine's neck stand up. "I told you before, none of our children ever truly leave us. You would do best to remember that." She straightened her back and returned to her desk. "You are nothing in this world, Katherine," she declared, while toying with the chain on her neck. "Let this be your first and final warning. You will obey my word." And she dismissed Katherine with a flick of her hand. Katherine hobbled her way back to her room, closing the door with a gentle push behind her. Finally, she let the tears pour out as she tentatively rubbed the backs of her knees. The skin was swollen and raw. It would be at least a couple of days before she would be able to walk without wincing from the pain. She turned and slammed her hands against the wall in anger. Every step she took until then would be a constant reminder of the wrath of Sister Nora. A reminder that she was always watching and waiting for one of the girls to make a mistake so she could abuse them in some way for her own sick entertainment. Katherine threw herself onto her bed and sobbed uncontrollably into her arms. What was to happen to her here? As she lay in bed later that night, her mind replayed the heinous event that had occurred. Her active mind and the pain from her wounded skin was preventing her from sleeping. It must have been close to around 3 in the morning, she guessed, when she felt a low vibration which disrupted her tired train of thought. She couldn't work out what was causing it, but it seemed to be coming from right underneath her. Gingerly, she crept towards the door, but the vibration lessened. Next, she tried lying flat on the ground and pressing her palms against the floorboards. There it was. She could feel it perfectly from that angle. She frowned, but then it dawned on her. The chapel was located under her room, which meant the vibration could only have been coming from somebody playing the organ. But who, at this early hour, and why? She crawled back into bed, her mind buzzing with this new information. Eventually, thanks to the constant hum from below, Katherine managed to drift off to sleep. She slept heavily, her dreams filled with images of a shining crucifix and a lonely chapel.